Hey guys, so in this video, I wanted to give some of my biggest advices with getting like writing sort of peaking blocks going into a competition for powerlifting. And I think this is a really important concept because this last block going into your meet is going to determine a lot of how things do go. Because usually when I get asked a question like, what do you think you're going to be able to hit at a meet? And I'm like, well, I have no idea because I'm 12 weeks out. I can tell you that training is going X way right now. So if I was to compete, say, next weekend, I could probably tell you around what my performance is going to be like on each lift, depending upon how training is going. So this is just to say that that last final block going into your meet is going to determine a lot of what's actually going to be possible on that day. So I have a few tips for writing peaking blocks I think are going to be really helpful for lots of people that are not as familiar with this process. So I think that the first thing is that you want to prioritize programming in things that feel good for you, that build a high degree of confidence and that you are get very motivated to train. And like, the reason why I say that this is so important is because if you feel confident, if you're doing things that you like and that feel good, going into your meet, you're going to be really excited. This training is feeling really good. For example, if I was to, give my clients just some sort of exercise that they just don't like, they just don't seem to have a very high level of psychological engagement with it. It seems to like nearly just take a lot of like psychological energy for them to get under the bar or move the weight and do that variation, whatever it is. Generally, they're not going to be as excited to train. And usually I've also found that there's a correlation between enjoying an exercise variation and how much it does actually transfer to your bench press or your squat or your deadlift. For example, I find like pause squats work really well for some lifters, and for some lifters, like they don't really get much out of it. So programming in things that make you feel good and that you want to basically also provide lots of chances for you to build momentum and confidence going into your meet with not picking this is true of like every single block, but especially true in peaking blocks. So with choosing weights in training that feel good, that are somewhat challenging, but you're not like grinding week after week. Because what's going to happen if you do that is that one, you're probably not going to make as good of adaptations going into your meet. And then two, you're probably going to be very discouraged when you do go into your actual meets with training not feeling very great. Maybe everything in that block just felt heavy, and you might not actually have a peak at all, and you might actually have a slight downturn in performance, or you might essentially only hit like what you hit in the gym because your fatigue was that high throughout the entire block. So we want to give ourselves like the right load selection, so like probably choosing minimal bar speed, slow down as much as we possibly can, and reducing fatigue during training. Now, it's very common for lifters to feel more beat up with peaking blocks, and it's despite like trying to like minimize fatigue as much as we possibly can to help like maximize like performance. A lot of that has to do with like the psychological engagement that lifters have going into meets, but that's something that's really important. I think another thing that's overlooked is how heavy should you go before a meet, because lots of times this is a huge variable in how well you're actually going to do on meet day. So typically you're going to be doing singles going into your meets. And so my advice is to aim more towards an RPE 8.5-ish on a squat and a deadlift, and maybe like a 9 at the absolute most on bench press. And the reason why I say this and not like to max out in the gym, like RPE 9.5 or something like that, is because after you go to that high of an intensity threshold, people tend to have downticks in performance because your body goes into a recovery mode for like a week or so, and you're not actually making adaptations. If you're actually properly peaking, you're going to be choosing weights the week before that basically allow you to continue making adaptations into the meet to get stronger. Then on the meet week, where we're doing a taper down in volume, and while keeping intensity relatively high, to maximize like maximal force production on that heavy day, we're probably going to have a bigger peak because we give ourselves a really big opportunity to actually adapt and not just like recover. Because there's something called like SRA curves, or like general adaptation syndrome. Basically, you introduce like a stimulus and you get fatigue, and so you're down below like where you can actually do a baseline. Recovery brings you back up to baseline. Now, we don't want to just be at baseline when we peak. We want to have this adaptation curve be a little bit higher than normally would be because we're reducing fatigue, and you will probably that's your peak essentially. Now, and that's just going to have to do with a lot of that has to do with like how you taper, and then also with intensity. But don't go to RPE 10. Don't even touch it on a 9.5. Stay closer to an RPE 8 on squat and on deadlift, and stay closer to an RPE 9 on like bench press. You don't need to go RPE 10. Single at 8 is probably going to be very indicative of what you can hit at a single at 10. So you can use like an estimated run max with your coach from that weight that you did to basically say, okay, this is probably about what to expect on meet day. So that's something that's also really important. And then another really big thing I do have is do not pull volume too early. I think lots of lifters, they look at some really strong guys or some more quick up guys who tend to taper down like 3 weeks out or something like that. And this tends to not work very well. Usually most of your volume reduction should come the week of the meet. So essentially deadlift's going to need the biggest taper, squat second most, and then bench the least. But don't start your taper too early because you could actually become detrained too quickly. So you want to make sure we keep the stimulus probably for most people until the week of the meet, where you're actually going to lower things down a lot more. And then my last tip with basically peaking and writing peaking blocks is just focus on doing things that just make your training feel good, that build confidence. I'm reiterating this again just because this is such a big thing. If you believe if you're going to do well at your meet day, if you've had a good training cycle, you're probably going to do a lot better than if things were really hard throughout the entire process. So keep in things that feel good. If you know that belt squats help make your squat go, keep them belt squat. If you know that level bench press helps your bench press go up. Or for example, one of my clients, he was doing more of a linear periodization on his squat and his bench press and on his deadlift, but his deadlift wasn't feeling very good. So we kind of went back in time and we said, okay, like where has your deadlift historically responded best to? And when we looked at it, it was like for Edwin, it was about sets of like 5 to 8 for the majority of his volume. Seemed to be what really his deadlift just responded the best to. So about 3 weeks out, we modified the training approach, and then we saw his deadlift estimated run max just completely go off. So again, like do things that that feel good based off of past training blocks. It should be sort of like your meet essentially your block going into your meet should be more or less your greatest hits. So choose things that feel good, that that your body responds well to build more confidence going into your meets. That's my biggest advice with peaking. So yeah, guys, have any questions, just let me know. But hopefully this was helpful. Talk to you guys in the next one.